viewers, we have in the studio Professor Michael Collins from University of Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Canada. He is a professor of adult education and a coordinator of undergraduate program in adult education. Professor Michael has been working for the last 30 years in the area of adult education, and he is having a understanding of adult education, and he is a good philosopher, a researcher and a teacher of adult education. We will be discussing various aspects related to adult education because that is his area of research, thinking and dissemination. So, Professor Michael Collins, we welcome you in the studio, and may I ask you, since you have been working since long in the area of adult education, what exactly you mean by adult education?
Well, we've got the very big, starting with the big question. It's huge in scope, but one way, and maybe very simplistic, is to start with a definition. And a definition would be really people, education, concerned with the education of people who've left school or have responsibilities, assumed adult responsibilities, and are accountable at law and for making a living or whatever with the state. In other words, it's not an age thing. So a person, we may be concerned very much with young people and young adults or almost children once they've accepted that sort of responsibility. And although you say we're concerned with adult education, we are also obviously through parents concerned with schooling as well. That's a fairly simplistic definition. Another way is to think of adult education as being concerned with the individual, social, psychological, spiritual development. These are a broader term of looking at adult education.
Okay. Now, see, since you said that there are some of the students who are dropped out from the formal system, but what I understand is that you practically have children 100% in the school. But from your this talk, it appears that some of the students, they go to school for some time and then they get dropped. Maybe they take up some job or something like this. If that happens to be the case, then what is exactly the age limit?
Well, if you think of a limit in our sense, it probably would be school leaving age at 16. And clearly a lot of people that drop out, and in North America and Europe generally, the Western Europe, the dropout problem is increasing. Okay, and so again, adult education is picking up and helping people either not necessarily just to come back to school, that's one initiative, or to work with people that already have left school. Many, of course, or most of them, without jobs.
I see. Okay. Now, in that, under that adult education, what are the activities, what are the subjects which, or what are the, say, points which you keep in mind while carrying out the adult education for those? That means, what courses are you taking up?
Well, they would be the normal, the usual type of courses that the schools would use, depending upon what they required. So if they were thinking of linking back again with the school system, that would be the kind of type we would want to use. If it's a question, and this is the sort of young people we're talking about, looking for what would be called employability, this concern of the state, then they would, the question would be what they call skills provision, reading, writing, and concept like that.
I see. Now, if that is the focus, then what are the various methods, strategies which you are employing in Canada?
Well, again, it's another interesting subject. The whole question, first of all, I think before this I'd like to say, I think one of the points of adult education which we share is commitment counts first. Before method. One of the big concerns we have is that methods are important and strategies are important, that the method does not drive and determine the actual educational experience. So one of the basic things of adult education would be acknowledging the past experience of the student, of the learner. And so in a very formal way, there's a very popular approach called self-directed learning. And the actual device which we use for that, or is used for that, is called a learning contract, in which the student and teacher, the adult, agree together and write down what is to be the contract. And so this is very much part of the formal adult education. And the idea is to respect the strategy or the technique, and acknowledge the needs and the adulthood of the student, but it's still very formal. At a less formal stage approach is really the concern with dialogue, as we're doing here. In other words, recognizing more than in the school classroom that education is a dialogical process. Now that's very difficult to do in any case, and that's quite a bit of a struggle because there's a time factor, as we're facing here with a short video, that how do we compress into dialogue. But part of that, so that's another strategy, because one of the concerns is getting people involved. Right.
So that means, if I understand that what you do is that it is the individual's need is assessed, and after assessing the need, then you plan the program accordingly.
Yes.
You do not have a group based program, you have more individualized based program.
Well, this is true, and this is where we've got two adult educations. A well-known British adult educator from the Workers' Educational Association, Raymond Williams, talked about two adult educations. And one is the one that's very formal, in which we set out the needs and objectives. And the other is the idea of adult education, which people here would recognize as a movement, the second form of adult education, in which it's a group rather than the individual. So adult ed is a movement, organization, of which we see, particularly in this country, great initiatives. That's why we look to India for that kind of organization. The first adult education is the one which concerns with the individual learning, self-directed learning. Now, one of the complaints of that, of course, is from some perspective, is the very strong focus on the individual, individualism rather than individualization that comes out of that.
Okay. Now, in that series, since Canada is quite advanced technologically, and there is a field coming up which is known as educational technology, yes, wherein all your mass media, where your video, your computers, your print media, etc. are there. So I like to know to what extent you are using educational technology for promoting the adult education.
Probably not as much as we should be, bearing in mind that it is more accessible. But let me say here right now, we do have here the same sort of technology. It's a question of accessibility. We have it there, and because the question is how much we use it. Now, unfortunately, it sometimes is used in a way that the technology is, again, we use the term steers the process. So what we tend to want to be concerned with is, first of all, incorporating the media as its needs be. But having said this, there is a big history of adult education using the media, going right back to what we call the Farm Forum in the 30s, in which on the Canadian prairies, which are big spaces between, quite contrast here, where the farmers were quite separated, the technology allowed telephones to go in very quickly, plus radios. So at the state level, we actually use the radios and the telephone for communication between students and tutors as a technology, and that's been going on 60 years ago.
I see.
So there is a long tradition through adult education of using the media, and we can find instances now even of using the internet. But I would say it's a very small percentage of the actual function of adult education at this stage. And this is, I think, the experience of even adult education organizations like the Open University, which is well known, which you have a similar model. When you look at the amount of print and face-to-face and the media, even though television is used and computers, the actual percentage of media use is quite small compared to the whole amount, maybe 10%.
Now, let us now move to the, instead of the technology, the human beings, the community, because all these adults, they belong to some community. Are you involving the community in adult education?
And I think we can look to here. I'm quite impressed at the ideas and the attempt for community-based connections with and community-based adult education. So when you say we, I'll take we're talking about the formal adult education. There are two ways of doing it. One is for the adult education to go out into the community from the institution, and we try and do that. The problem with that, of course, is you've got the outside expert going in. And I've been involved in several on some of our Aboriginal reserves. We worked there, and we're in prisons and so on, and going out from the university and doing work, including with media kinds of usage. So there's that extension of the university programs or the university into the community. Now, bearing in mind how we're getting massively cut back, that only represents a small amount of the that's going on. And already the question is, how much should we interfere? So what we're looking at now with this community-based university connection is maybe we should learn from the community. So we're bringing in people more and more looking to it into the university classroom, that sort of in my particular program.
Right. So that means you are trying to establish linkage between the university and the community. That's a high priority. And then through that you are trying to promote the adult education. Now if that be the case, and since you have visited many other countries also in this particular connection, how exactly do you think the adult education to be evaluated? In my opinion, we cannot use the same evaluation techniques which we are using it in the formal system. So according to you, what in fact the procedures, the tests, the method of evaluation?
Well, a feeling and the approach I take in program evaluation development is, in fact, for adult education evaluation, it should be concerned with what we call formative evaluation, if we want to put a term on it. In other words, the evaluation process itself should be part of the development, not just accountability. Having said that, from our perspective in the institution, we know that adult educators out there have to evaluate for accountability for state funding and general legitimation. So we do teach the same sort of techniques, needs assessment, formal needs assessment, and set out the objectives. And but our main driving force, I mean, that strategy is, in fact, we're quite clear, is in fact to help adult educators, to help community-based programs do that part. We really go in with a feeling that the program is worthwhile.
Now, can you tell us in short, in fact, what type of researches have been conducted so far in Canada with which you have some association?
First of all, you can look at it from the point of view of method. The adult education research covers all, we incorporate, if we look at our forums in North America, Canada, and the United States, from empirical, statistical, historical, phenomenological, philosophical, what we call qualitative, critical theory, which is an interest of mine. So we have what works, method. We're not concerned with a single method. So we see all of those kinds of research, methodological approaches. The sort of topics we're interested, obviously peace education, women's studies. Very popular in North America is, as we mentioned before, research on the self-directed learning on the learner. Now my particular interest is similar to yours, Dr. Sansaval, is we need now to return to more research on the role of the teacher. From all of these methods I've mentioned, and that's to some extent where we're moving now. What is I'm moving in with a group of people. What is the role of the adult educator? Looking at that in a research perspective.
Okay. Now, see, having touched the salient features of the adult education. Now, I like to ask you what you like to suggest to us, because we are also having the adult education program in our country going on. So, what lesson can we have from your studies and from your experience?
I'm not being modest here, but it's more, I feel like an adult educator here. I think we can learn a lot in North America from what the ideas and attempted programs, such as the one we saw yesterday, we talked about yesterday in the Institute with about the organization.
Yashpal had taught.
Professor Yashpal, okay. It really resonated, his ideas with us. So so this suggests that we should be concerned more with a two-way kind of approach. So my one recommendation, and I would be, let's first of all, the immediate problem in context here and now are most important in the community, and that's already going on. What I would hope for rather than recommend is that we can start to internationalize our efforts. And I think a lot will depend on the initiatives and willingness here with adult educators here to make connections or allow us to make connections with each other. And this is, again, I think, is where the technology can help, as well as, more important though, is the willingness. So that would be, I think, the major hope that I would have, making connection, a globalization or internationalization in which we could be helped here.
Thank you, Michael, for sparing the time for our viewer. Dear viewers, we have covered right from the definition of adult education as is being conceived by Professor Michael Collins. Along with it, we moved it to what methods and strategies they are employing in promoting the adult education, the role of educational technology, the community, the university at large in promoting the adult education. And he did touch upon the evaluation aspect, which normally is considered to be difficult and it has to be done very seriously. He did touch upon that, and he did mention what sort of researches they are conducting as a team, as an individual, and he did give us some suggestions for going ahead. Thank you very much once again, Professor Collins.
Thank you for having me.